Welcome to Herrera on Hollywood. My name is Steven Herrera. We talk about Blu-rays and DVDs here. Our special guest is Matt Patterson. Matt is a marketing manager, producer, and project leader in the entertainment industry. He worked at the Warner Brothers Warner Archive Collection for 12 years. Matt, thank you for taking the time to be on the show again.
Well, anytime I can talk about what I did is a wonderful time because it really, like, it only existed and why I stuck with it for so long. Um, it was like two little flashes in a pan, and it just, it was allowed to exist. And then, then the pandemic came. Thanks, pandemic.
And we're going to get to that era in a little bit. So, the reason we're doing this episode is because we're transitioning from Halloween horror movies to Christmas movies. And during the time in between, we celebrate the film noir style of filmmaking in Noirvember. And I wanted to ask you, Matt, how do you define film noir?
Well, film noir is really interesting because, the French first defined it, and it's been found to like even be referenced in French literature to go back contemporaneously and point out that these crime films could start. I mean, again, when it starts is up for debate, but the style, very specific style, was what the French were talking about, and that was usually told from the point of view of the villain, and then because of the code, like I mean, it wasn't the Hays Code, but it was the production code. Um, he had to kind of get his everything coming to him, but he'd usually like win in a little bit or gets an insight in the end and then die. Generally, right? Because, and the reason why I say generally is that it wasn't really recognized by people in the United States as a genre until like the 70s when they were sort of discovering, and this is just, there were people who discovered it before because like Truffaut first kind of talked about it, but it was nobody set out to make a noir film. And this was, it's a unique genre because of that, because it's kind of a tag put on um, these movies later. And there's no real other genre quite like it. So, people weren't like, oh, I got to see the latest 19, because it's 1948, I got to go see the latest noir movie. That wasn't what they were doing. They were sort of known then as a melodramas, which nobody refers to, oh, I'm making a melodrama today. Um, and then maybe a little later as a crime movie, but that still is generic enough. And so it's just very interesting because it is first kind of an intellectual exercise, and then with like the Noir Festival in the 90s really redefined film noir. It's a label put on films.
I think the general consensus is that it ran from the end of World War II up until the late 1950s. And as you said, the production code was in effect at that time.
Yeah, and some people go ahead and they'll put it earlier and say, "Oh, this is the first noir film from like 1939," and yeah, but it's in general. You can also also point to films during the war that were made. But in general, it's like we'll say the typical noir film was 1946, and it involved a, a weird villain.
And these were crime dramas in
Yeah,
which the audience was asked to sympathize with the criminal.
that's right. that's the secret of it, and uh, and you can't help it now. And now these films, you're always empathizing with it. But when you see so many films from this era, as I did, or anybody who's into classic films, is you really can pick them out pretty easily. I mean, so, by the way, some of them exist as westerns, right? Because we would have noir cowboy films, because they would share writers. Because again, these writers didn't specialize in noir; they just specialized in what they I don't know, what they could sell, right? Um, but
And as
they,
you mentioned, it was a style of filmmaking, not a
yeah,
genre, so it could transcend many genres.
yeah, that's absolutely right. And people think of it as a contemporaneous crime film, but again, you find the same elements. Like it's very, very easy to find them in cowboy films and westerns, right? So it also makes it like you can watch these films and discover a new noir film, and that kind of makes it fun because the definition changes, and it has changed through time because they add more films to it essentially. But these films are also being rediscovered, and with streaming and DVD and mostly Blu-ray, but not quite as much because Blu-ray is kind of an echo of DVD. Um, they just they find these new films, and it's really good because it carries them, and it introduces them to a new group of people because they don't really see films like this genre.
Why do you think that film noir has become so popular today?
So when you want to see something that goes into the future, right? And maybe it means something different today, but it feels like it what it meant, in the day, and today it's like timeless, and it's a gift to us in the future to be able to see it. So yeah, it's kind of it's a bit of a mystery, but it's very interesting to follow as a professional because you'll discover new movies, and it's like almost an endless hole. And then for fans too, they're astounded to. I mean, like, what was the noir canon? What is the noir canon today is different than it was 20 years ago.
So on this show, we talk about DVDs and Blu-rays, as I mentioned, and I wanted to show an example of a film noir box set.
Yeah,
2004, Warner Home Video released the Film Noir Classic Collection. And this was one of the early products. As I said, it was from Warner Home Video. It was before the Warner Archive Collection was introduced. And this had five movies, five DVDs, and they were the original size DVD cases. And then Warner actually released four more volumes in this series.
yeah, yeah. I think it was four more, and that was pre-Warner Archive.
Can you talk about how film noir on DVD helped fuel the popularity of the genre, and how did they decide to release specific movies in these box sets?
Well, there there are two different answers, right? Because obviously, uh, like in the 2000s, film noir was already established among film viewers as a viable, um, you know, these were classic films, right? And you could see, I mean, from those films, at the time, well, concrete asphalt jungle was probably the biggest one, but it was a great grouping because you could buy a few different groups of those, right? That was how it was determined. And uh, and then you would have a set, and you would have um, the set would be valuable to you because it was film noir. But again, like in film festivals, there was already film noir festival. People knew about it. But what happened was uh, these collections were available nationwide, and so um, you know, as somebody with an art house cinema might know about film noir, regular people didn't, and now they could. And this was a huge, huge step. And so the first one was a big seller. So the second one was just another one where they grouped these films together, and they released it. And by the way, again, this is what they released. Like, let's say 25 films, right? That's a drop in the bucket for what Warner Brothers owns. Uh, but they were big films. And so, and then Warner Archive came along, and Warner Archive initially was a separate division. It was the digital division, um, which was different than home video. And home video determined at that point DVD sales. They were still things were still selling, but they weren't selling as a good in, like, let's say 2009 as they were in 2002. So they said, go ahead and release them, right? But we did, and we targeted people who wanted the films, and so we sold it to them, and it did very well for us. And our division kept up until they decided to sell the company to AT&T.
What I want to point out about this set is that it was released in 2004, and that was before
That's it.
Blu-ray, that was before video streaming services were
Oh
introduced,
yeah,
and these were actually pressed DVDs. So what
yeah,
you were talking about in terms of Warner Archive's collection was that Archive Collection was offering discs that were made on demand,
yes.
based on customer orders online.
And um, and it was radically different because um, we could print less, right? And so, and without the returns that the normal videos had, like there were no returns on our videos. And we launched in at the kind of a March of 2009. I started like uh, 2 weeks before Warner Archive came out. And by the way, I was just like a fan. I wasn't like, my life wasn't dedicated to these things.
After they released Volume 1 on
Hmm.
DVD of this Film Noir Classic Collection,
Yeah,
one of these films that was in that collection, The Asphalt Jungle,
right.
was actually licensed by Criterion and released on Blu-ray disc in
Yeah,
2016.
yeah.
Then, because Criterion had licensed The Asphalt Jungle, Warner Archive Collection released the other four films from Volume 1 on Blu-ray individually and later as a bundle that they called Four Film Collection Film Noir. And that was in 2020.
Yes.
And you talk
I'm
about
still there.
what was happening behind the scenes at that time at Warner Archive Collection.
Well, in 2020, right? You said 2004. Again, it was like, uh, 16 years had gone by, right? So we could release them again. And that was more of, because there were so many of that set kind of out. Um, we could release them as, first of all, individual movies, which was cool because then that we were able to kind of re-promote them, right? Again, a decade and a half later. And then they kind of brought them in to a 4 DVD set, because uh, basically the market said that it was, we had already sold them as individuals, right? So now they could be even less.
A lot of the film noir movies that were released on DVD at this time, in this time of this original collection I was talking about, that was their first appearance on DVD. And a lot of them, they were remastered for release, and they look excellent on these DVD editions.
Oh yeah. So George, who's the vice president there, he really knew how to do it right. And by not kind of going through home video, right? They just check a box. They didn't really kind of understand. I mean, they did understand on some releases, but other releases they didn't really know what they were doing, right? But that's where Warner Archive Collection, we had quality controls. We had people who knew what they were doing when they were ordering, the people on the back end, who went on to great success. There's basically a whole team on a whole other company that's grown immensely. We just had really good people, and we worked on it very anonymously or pseudo anonymously, right? Because we had a podcast as well. I mean, I think we did specifically like 300 or 400 episodes on the podcast. I mean, we were just constantly working, and it was great, because we threw ourselves uh, into these products, and we also worked on other products too. So it was just really neat, and of course I remember where I was almost. Uh, I think it was like we released like 4,000 videos. I mean, it was just so many. So some do slip by. And I've seen them recently, and I was like, did I work on this? And then I'd look at the date and I'd be like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
And I think it's great that Warner Archive Collection did that podcast to give context to some of these older films, help the fans appreciate the time that they were released in. And then not only that, but these box sets had a lot of bonus features. So you had special
Yeah.
commentaries,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
trailers, and just a lot of behind the scenes content that helped viewers really appreciate them more.
And those came from the earlier discs because we just replicated them. Um, the stuff that was, that we did that was new was also, we did great new we did new commentaries and new stuff, and we would use old stuff too. It, they the home video that happened in like the 2000s, a lot of money went into it then, and it was really good. And then there was kind of this middle period where we both we were both releasing stuff from the library, and they kind of had more of what they considered the A material, and we took kind of B material, because they used newer stuff. Um, but they uh, both of the groups came out with just incredible extras and commentaries, and that's the stuff that you don't find on streaming, right? They have the capability to run it, but they don't really care if it exists or
It's
not.
a different
I,
market, right? It's a different consumer.
yeah, and TCM, um, long may they reign. Uh, they provide at least some information, before and after the films, but it helps you understand the film as in relation to other films and historically how to place the film. And I always find that that is so helpful, even like the 2 or 3 minutes that they have. Um, it's really actually all the old horror host. It goes, but now it's like they're all dressed proper and they all happen to live in the same house. Uh, that's just my little commentary on the Atlanta sets.
And
But
that's a good segue to the next question is that you mentioned that you have been watching film noir on
Yeah.
TCM and FXM. What are
Uh,
some of
yeah.
the non-Warner Archive collection or non-Warner Brothers titles that you've been poring over on those channels?
Yeah. So it's very interesting how, again, I understand why they do it. Um, but they've been releasing these, you can find Warner Archive titles. Uh, you don't really, you don't really find them on HBO Max, but you find them, you see them on Amazon. You see them. I mean, TCM is a great place where they live, and if you have the digital TCM, which is not on TV, although I think it depends. But I watch it through Hulu, um, and they've just got they have it for like, well, it depends. Like some of the things last 3 weeks. They have a 3 week window. Some a day. I always check it every day, and I've really only started that this year. I watch it now, and like I guess I'm an expert, right? Because I mean I've just seen all these movies for the podcasts and stuff, and then I do forget them sometimes. But there's so many on, and then I've taken to watching FX FXM and FXM. I hadn't heard of, right? But they've kind of come out with these new masters of like the the back catalog of 20th, usually 20th century Fox. And I'm like, I've never seen any of these films. Now, so one of the reasons I see them is because it's like, oh, this is an interesting film, but it has Marilyn Monroe in a small part. And she's in a small part. And like, I just thought when we would say that all the time, and it would be like, oh, this one movie or that one movie or whatever. I thought it was like maybe, 4 or 5 films. It's Marilyn Monroe. I didn't realize it was like 20 films, right? I just didn't realize how many there were. And I'm watching them all, and I'm just like, whoa, what are these movies, right? And by the way, on FXM, they don't provide any context. There's nothing, right? You have to kind of know about them. Now again, if you don't know about them, you'd still like the movies. But but I know all the players because a lot of them are Warner Brothers players. Usually Warner Brothers players, like later. Like I'm seeing, and they like Warner Brothers players uh, after Warner Brothers, like the '50s or something, and they'll be like old, and it's really interesting because they're still playing the same type of character, right? Because they had long careers as character actors.
So now that we've covered Turner Classic Movies and FX movies, are there any streaming services that you have used for watching film noir? Because I know that the selection of classic films on Netflix is limited.
Yes, that Netflix is limited. You can find a few things, like again, but it's like, oh, this month they've got a bunch. This month they don't, right? I don't really have Netflix right now, trying to save some money because now that they all need to make money, they've raised the prices. So it's like I was trying to spend less money than cable. Now, if you have like 5 of these channels, it costs as much as cable used to. So I'm like, ooh. Um, but I found Hulu is good with TCM, but like that's going to probably disappear from my life at the end of the year, which is sad. So I'm trying to get it all done now. Um, but like okay, not Apple, probably not Netflix, but but Amazon has some of them. I mean, you can find them, but you kind of have to know what you're looking for, right?
Another example I wanted to give is library-based streaming
Oh yeah,
services
yeah,
like
yeah,
Canopy.
yeah. Those are great, by the way. I Yeah, Canopy is good. I haven't and then, by the way, I live like mm, two two buildings from the LA library. So that's where I now get my DVDs. And I'm just like consuming those. But but where else am I gonna rent, DVDs? Also, and I get them to watch them for free. I mean, and they have a lot of Blu-rays too.
And I
It's
do the
really
same
nice.
thing, renting DVDs from libraries. They
Yeah,
have a good selection.
it's it's great. There's so much stuff out there, but there's really not anybody there to um, help you go through it. And that's the problem with streaming. And that's why these podcasts are good because at least they help. But I just, it's just too bad because it's so inexpensive, but they make it inexpensive or they don't value it. And really the only channel that can help you is TCM. Eddie's events, he did them with Alan, I think, and he had them going back because he'd start them in San Francisco and then he did like LA and then he'd come to LA for 2 weeks. I think that was like 90, 98,
Late
like it's
90s.
yeah, and it was fantastic. Like for me, it was just like that's what I wanted, right? And I had really, I mean, again, I knew what film noir was. I had gone to film school, right? That's where I found out about it. And um and I kind of watched it on the old AMC where they'd sit, they had a guy in the fireplace and he sat by the corner. And before Turner bought it, bought the guy out because they had RKO films. Um, but it was growing and it was so exciting, and I didn't know about these deep cuts, and I'd sit there and there was a guy in front of me, right? Not a TV show. He'd just say, "This is important because of this," right? And I'd be like, "Great, let's watch the film." And I'd be there almost every night just watching the films. But this happened once a year, right? That was when I was into it. Now I'm watching these films every day, and I'm discovering new things. So it's like you you gain something, right, with the films being free, or close to free, or with, oh God forsaken ads. Um, and but you lose something in the context, right? Like because I'd like somebody there to tell me why I'm watching what I'm watching, because I don't know. I mean, I know, but I don't really know.
And that's what makes the experience so much more enjoyable is that you have a tour guide like Eddie Muller or
Yes.
Alan K. Rhodey who can help you understand the significance of these films and even tell you stories about the lives of the actors and filmmakers
Oh yeah.
they were during the time that they were making these movies.
Yeah. And it's great entertainment, right? Because that's ultimately why, well, at least, I mean, maybe some people aren't, but that's why I'm into these films. They're entertaining, and and I'm always looking for kind of new experiences, right? And these are, you know, um, they're new, and they continue to be new, and that's what makes them exciting.
And
And
what's
and they
old is
can,
new again, and that's the film
yeah.
effect.
Eh, Yeah, and but what's old is new again also happens as a technology changes, right? As VHS works up to Blu. I mean, well, yeah, because I mean, all the way to Blu-ray, and then all the way to 4K, right? And
And
then after 4K, I don't
I'm going to
think you.
jump in here because we're running out of time, Matt, but
Oh,
I think that's a good place to wrap this up. So I
the
want to say
future.
thank you very much to Matt Patterson for taking the time to be on the show again.
Bye.
Bye bye.